Welcome to Kingston Now. I'm Jimmy Buff. This week we're going to take a look at a couple of interesting businesses that call Kingston home. First up is the Trends Research Institute, founded by Gerald Celente in 1980, and Gerald joins us now. Gerald, you're also the publisher of the Trends Journal. Tell us how that all started.
Well, I used to be a government affairs specialist in D.C. back in the 70s. I also was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. And then when I went to D.C., I used to put together political action committees. And the Iranian conflict was heating up. And I'd been around politics for a while, and I knew what it looked like. And Jimmy Carter ends up going to Iran to spend New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife. And he comes back and he announces to the American people that the Shah was the island of stability in the Middle East. And everyone applauded. And I knew the history of what was going on in Iran. I knew how the United States, the CIA, and MI6 of the UK overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953. And I knew what a brutal dictator from reading the Shah was, and the Savak, the secret police. And I'm watching this revolution start taking place. And at that moment when Carter said that, I became a political atheist. I don't believe in anybody's political religion. You know, keep it to yourself. If you want to believe that, that's fine, but don't proselytize to me. I know what it looks like, and I don't believe in political religions. So while I'm watching the people get emotionally caught up in something they know nothing about, I started saying to myself, what will be the implications of this? And I realized that current events form future trends, or as von Schiller said many years ago, in today already walks tomorrow. So I realized that gold and oil prices were going to go up because this thing wasn't going to go away. And I started investing in gold and oil futures. And I knew nothing about how to do this. But I made enough money where I could quit my job and begin the Trends Research Institute. And also realizing that all things are connected. So when you look at something, you don't only look at it for economic, you look at social, economic, political, business, consumer. And I created a system that I call Globalnomic, and it looks at over 300 different trend categories, always making connections. And that if you look at things for the way they are, and not for the way you want them to be, you can get a pretty clear perspective. But people put their own ideology on top of it. This is what I want, this is what I wish, this is what I hope for, this is what I like. And I just give a diagnosis. So that's when I began the Trends Research Institute, doing that.
So how did you end up in the Hudson Valley from Washington, D.C.?
What happened was when I left Chicago, I used to live between Chicago and D.C., and I wanted to come back east. And being a research-minded person, when I left in 1970, the Yorktown Heights was the country. When I came back in 79, it was a suburb. So I started going north and east and west up the Hudson Valley. And I found Rhinebeck. And that's where I lived, because I used to go back and forth to the city a lot. And I found a place in 1979, Rhinebeck, which had Amtrak. And I liked the Taconic Parkway much better than the Thruway, because it's a prettier ride. So we settled in Rhinebeck. And then people asked me, how come I left Rhinebeck and came to Kingston?
I was about to.
Well, because the neighborhood started going bad. People like the Clintons started coming up. You know, I'm a political atheist. And I say that because these are the people that think they're better than everybody else, you know? And they should be waited upon and served and applauded. And it became too white for me. And so that's why I like Kingston. Kingston has character. It has beauty. And uptown Kingston, where I am, I mean, you know, I could live anywhere I want in the world. And it's also very accessible. Like I travel a lot. So, you know, I'm down to Newark, I'm out to LaGuardia, I'm out to JFK, up to Albany, over to Newburgh. And you also have, and 15 minutes I'm in the mountains away from everything. So to me, it's the ideal location. It has the artistic, it has the environmental, it has the academic, it has a mixture of the arts that very few places have. And I have people coming in from all over the world up to our offices in Uptown, and they always marvel at the beauty and the scale. And that's what I like about it, the scale.
This is Kingston Now. More with Gerald Celente of the Trends Research Institute in a moment. Welcome back to Kingston Now. The focus this week is on unusual and compelling businesses here in Kingston. And with us is Gerald Celente of the Trends Research Institute and the publisher of the Trends Journal. So we were talking about the Mohican Market. What was it like when you bought it? What condition was it in?
Well, the Gallo family had left it, and other people had taken it over, and it was really in terrible shape. I have photos you could.
Yeah, it was in a grocery store, right? A market.
Yeah, but it was. They had wall-to-wall carpeting over these beautiful floors, and so. But as soon as I walked in, I saw what it could be, and my initial thought was to turn this beautiful place into a restaurant and a nightclub with hot jazz, and as years went by, I realized that wouldn't be a good idea, but I created my dream. I built it out just like a hot nightclub and a restaurant, but I turned it into my offices. So people work around the bar. We have a big pizza oven in there, and I built a stage. So I created my dream, and I throw great parties as well. But so that's what I did. I just made it my dream, and it's a beautiful place to work. I have plants all over, and which I take care of, and it's a wonderful environment that's very inspirational. And I have plants outside, and it's all this beautiful southern exposure. So I feel very, very fortunate that I have that building, and I appreciate that whole area. You know, the most historic corner in the United States, the beautiful building across the street, the Claremont building. So it's a delight being there.
You saw its potential, which is not unusual for you because you're always forward-looking. Where are we in the world today? You've been doing the Trends Journal and the Trends Research Institute for 30 years. Does it ever feel like you're talking, that your words are falling on deaf ears?
For many years, yes, but no longer. Matter of fact, the Trends Journal is a huge international magazine as well now. Our international subscription base is almost as large as our domestic. And no, people know, a lot of people know that the game is rigged, as Bernie Madoff said, and he should know. And people also are losing faith, and you look at the data, some 17% of the people believe in Congress? You know, they must work for Congress and get paid off by them. You know, so people are realizing that things have to change and not hope in change you can believe in. Not, again, I'm a political atheist. You know, that's just jive talk to me, all that stuff. And the individual has to change. And that's where it really, Howard Zinn said it has to be the grassroots up. And I believe a place like the Hudson Valley, for example, could be that kind of area that's Renaissance ready. Going back to when it was better. When was the quality of life better? You know, when I was a young guy in college, nobody had stress. You know, there was that song, that Harry Chapin song. No, it was Harry Chapin. It was one of the songs. No, it wasn't that one. Cat in the Cradle. Yeah, crying about, you know, his father didn't go to the baseball game or something. Yeah, now mommy and daddy aren't home. You know, 6 weeks old, man, you're in a daycare. You know, I took the 8:15 into the city. Yeah, 8:15. Man, people are on the road at 5:30. You know, my generation became everything they said they were never going to become. So no, this thing is collapsing. And people are growing up to that fact. And the only way it's going to change is when people change. And I say it, you know, very clearly. You know, Gerald Celente's GC's 3Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan. And that it's not going to change again until the people change, which means that everyone needs to get in shape physically, emotionally, and spiritually, whatever that means to you. Because we're going down at every level. And it's not going to get better by itself. And they've just thrown the best shot at it, Congress did, for the last couple of years, beginning with Bush's TARP, Obama's stimulus, trillions upon trillions of dollars spent, zero to show for it. Other than the too big to fails got bigger. Those banks that they had to bail out, they're 20% bigger now than they were when we had to bail them out under Bush. So, yeah, there is an awakening.
These may be important times for you to keep sending out your message. How do people access the Trends Journal online or in print?
Trendsjournal.com, trendsjournal.com. It prepares you for the future.
How simple. Thank you, Gerald Celente. You're watching Kingston Now. Next up, it's Bruce McPherson, who runs a small publishing company in Kingston that recently got some big attention for one of its books. Stay with us. This week on Kingston Now, we're taking a look at a couple of cool businesses here in town. And joining us from McPherson Publishing and Company is Bruce McPherson. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm well. Tell me about the company. How did it get started?
It was almost by mistake. Back in 1974, I'd finished college. I had a friend who I thought was a brilliant writer. She couldn't get her book published. I had had a little experience publishing various materials in college. Essentially a small press operated at the college. And so I had a job, a little extra income, and said that we would do a small edition of her book, a one-time thing. I never intended to be a publisher. I guess I'm an accidental publisher. I had so much fun spending the better part of a year on that project that they say you get the ink under your fingernails, it never comes out. And that was pretty much the case with me. I went on. I had other kinds of jobs for a number of years, but I would bring out the odd book of poetry or prose fiction for a number of years until I decided that I would actually try to make a go of it.
Was there a moment where you had to make that decision to keep doing the small thing or make it a full-time operation?
Yeah, it was about 83.
Uh-huh.
It was just it had grown too large, but it was still at that point where it wasn't really feasible to try to live off of the operation, and it's still pretty small, and it's still and it's been 25 years of scraping by in many respects. But I decided it was necessary to decide whether to continue or not, and that's when I changed. Originally, the title of the press was Treacle Press, and treacle is a kind of a candy, but also it's like molasses, and it was originally the cure for a bite of a wolf. So that was the idea. There was a curative press. But in any case, in '83, I said, I'm going to take myself seriously. I'm going to give it a shot. Changed it to McPherson and Company, and went to New York and started talking to some people to see if I could get some attention. And
yeah, I think I read on your website there's a great story. You actually wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Times book review section and asked if you could talk to him.
It's close to that. What I actually did was I called up his secretary by phone and said, I'm the president of McPherson and Company, and I'd like an appointment with the editor of the New York Times.
And she said it must be a huge company.
Yes, right.
Uh-huh.
So.
And what about that meeting inspired you to keep going?
Well, I got a response. I mean, I got taken seriously, and I realized that if you want to be known and be seen and to be taken seriously, you have to go to the gatekeepers, and you have to address them with respect, and you're likely to be given some respect. And so the books that I presented were, within the next 2 or 3 months, all reviewed in the New York Times.
How did you end up in Kingston? How did this become the base of your operations?
Well, another accident, in a sense.
Car broke down at exit 19, or?
I was living in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, and in the mid 70s, and I met an artist at a book fair in New York city, and she had a studio in New York, and also she had a place up here outside of New Paltz, and we got together, and I loved this area, and I just never really wanted to leave. For a number of years, I would commute down to the city and work in the city in various jobs, usually related to publishing, and then came up here and started doing some freelance work, picked up and ran a type shop at one point across the river and some things like that. But I just always loved the area. So since '77, I've been up here, and since '87, I've been in Kingston. Kingston was sort of the next town up. That relationship ended, but not my relationship with the Hudson Valley. So.
You have, what, dozens of employees working at your office and your warehouse? Tell me about the actual operations of McPherson.
It's pretty much a one-person operation. I have a couple of guest editors for translation series, but they're out of the office. One is in Denver, the other is in Italy. They just present me with projects every couple of years.
This is Kingston Now, and we'll wrap up with Bruce McPherson in a moment. Welcome back to Kingston Now. We're talking with Bruce McPherson of McPherson Publishing and Company, and we're going to talk about one of his big successes right now, Jamie Gordon's The Lord of Misrule, which won the National Book Award last year. How big, and for folks who don't know what that is, I mean, that's almost the Academy Award of books.
It is in effect.
How many other books, and this is in the fiction category,
right.
How many other books was her book being considered against?
Some 300 or more. 300, 350, something like that. So
you've known for years that she's an amazing writer because you've worked with her. So were you surprised when it won nevertheless?
Oh, totally. It was a shock. It was unbelievable.
Tell me about the ceremony. What's that like?
Well, last year it was held at Cipriani's in Manhattan, which is almost like a mercantile church. It's this huge space that I think was once a bank, and it looks like it's from the Gilded Era. Anyway, there were about 800 people there. I think 100 tables, round tables in this massive place. And the fiction awards are the last thing. You know, you go through 2 or 3 hours of an event in which there are various speeches and talks, and finally they start dispensing the awards, and then they come to fiction last after the other categories of children's and nonfiction and poetry, and so it was certain that we were all at our table steeled against the fact, that it was going to lose. We knew that it was just too good to be true. It had been too good for it even to be nominated, so it was just a matter of controlling one's disappointment. And when it was actually called out, there was dead silence in the entire hall, because this is a book that was published only 2 days beforehand. So nobody basically had read the book. It had been nominated only a month before, and it was still at press until 2 weeks before the award was announced. So almost no one had read the book, been able to consider it, know what kind of writer she was. There was dead silence, and then there's cheers, sort of erupted in the hall from two ends. But the fact is that, I loved this book. It had been in my computer in an earlier version for 10 years. She had had an agent. She had been unable to sell it. I thought that it should go to a bigger publisher. When it didn't, and her agent more or less threw up her hands at the prospect, I encouraged Jamie to let me consider doing it. It would be a return to the roots, because we'd started together. My first book was her first book, her first real book, big book, her first novel. And And for 5 or 6 years, she just had a very hard time coming back to it. I think it held a lot of disappointment for her at the same time that she knew that she wanted to revise it somewhat, at least in the first part of the book, and she felt that there was something that was not quite right about it. And so for years, every summer, I was saying, you know, you're not teaching now, go finish it. But life intruded, and finally it came down at the end of 2009 that I thought, I've got to put this on my schedule, I've got to get it past, I've got to get her past it, because I was afraid that she would never write anything else. And so I thought, when I saw the list of the judges for the National Book Award, I thought that I recognized a couple of or 3 people who might actually have read some of her work before, in which case I thought, well, this guarantees at least she would be considered. And it would be my way of finally sort of introducing a lever to make her finish the book, because there are strict deadlines when you have to have books in, manuscripts in to the judges. And so I told her that's what I was going to do, and that's what I did.
What has the year, it's been almost a year since that happened, what has that year been like for you?
Well, it's been tumultuous, life-changing in a lot of ways. You know, suddenly I became everybody's best friend.
It's a great story and a great success. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
That's our show for this week. To find out more about the Trends Research Institute, go to GeraldCelente.com, and to find out more about McPherson Publishing and Company and their titles, go to McPhersonCo.com. For Kingston Now, I'm Jimmy Buff. See you next time.